also the Civic Engagement Coordinator for the campus. Michael Vasquez is not only our film coordinator here, but he's also a member of the Civic Engagement Board, and he's a business owner. And Michael Woodward is also a member of the Civic Engagement Board on campus, the student trustee for the Board of Trustees, and a Binghamton University student, as well as a SUNY Broome student. He does it all. So we're all going to speak somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, leave a little time for questions. We're just going to go till 7:30 to be respectful of everyone's time. And we're glad you're here. We're also recording this so that we can get this message out to those who couldn't make it today. So we appreciate you joining us. So my role is to get you to think about your role as citizen. So that is what we're here for. So let me just show you this little slide. I'm a fan of one bullet point at a time, but at the same time it kind of works to show you all of it at once. So if you've taken my class, and some of you have, actually almost all of you have at some point, we talk a little bit about President Lincoln's message of government of, by, and for the people. And so we want to focus on the by the people. And that role basically, or that message says that we're in charge of government, right? That government is composed of the people. And we have to give consent to government. And the way we do that is by voting. And if we don't vote, then government and our leaders don't know what we want, right? So we're in charge. We should act like we're in charge. And one way to do that, of course, is to vote. Could we always all vote in this country? The answer, of course, is no. So it's important to sort of take a look back at our history. When our country was first formed, only 6% of the country could vote. So that's a really low number. So 94% of Americans at the time, at the formation of our country, could not vote. The only people who could vote were 21-year or older white property owners, male white property owners, okay? The people who could not vote were females, white females, were males under 21 and anyone who didn't own property. Slaves could not vote, and free blacks could not vote. So that just left men who were 21 years older who owned property, a very small percentage of the population. Was there a question? Is that what
Yeah. How small was the Asian population back, like what we're talking about right now?
There was none at the time of this
Okay.
assessment.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, they don't acknowledge the Native American population, right?
Oh, nothing.
Because we didn't count them either. Okay, so then, so I reviewed this first bullet. Slowly over time, other segments of the population were granted the right to vote. Again, let me just go through this. So with the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, we ended slavery and gave black people the right to vote, but still the states made it quite difficult for them to vote with the Jim Crow laws, which I know you all are familiar with. And then the 19th Amendment passed in 1920 gave women the right to vote nationally. Prior to that, some of the states had given women the right to vote, but nationwide, they didn't have the right to vote until 1920. So while that seems like a long time ago for us, it's still fairly recent that women just had the right to vote. So just 100 years ago, in fact, we just celebrated that anniversary. More recently, in 1971, was the first time that 18-year-olds could vote. Prior to that, you had to be 21. So that's even more recent, that 18-year-olds were granted the right to vote. So you can see this evolution of the right to vote coming over time. All right, so as part of learning about our right to vote, we have to look at the Bill of Rights. Why was the Bill of Rights written? I have students here who might remember. What were the people worried about with the Constitution?
They were worried that the powers of the government would expand and become very similar to how the British government operated in the colonies.
Exactly. They were worried, here we are adopting this strong national government under the Constitution, and so they were really concerned that nowhere in the Constitution did it have any kind of list of protections protecting the citizens from the national government, from becoming too strong and too overbearing, much like the British monarchy. So as soon as the first Congress convened under the new government, a Bill of Rights was written. And as Logan said, it was to protect the citizens' individual liberties because they were fully not referenced in the Constitution. If I really wanted to push, I could make you tell me the 5 that were in the Constitution, but I won't make you do that right now. But there were 5 that were in the original Constitution: right to a trial by jury, habeas corpus, no bill of attainder could be passed, etc. There were 5 of those there, but still not the kind of protection the people wanted, so the Bill of Rights was passed. And here's sort of a refresher of what the first 8 amendments look like in the Bill of Rights. And this is brief, this is a quick summary. And most of us are pretty familiar, especially with the First Amendment, freedom of speech, right? We all know what that one is. Right to assemble, right to press, right to petition the government. Everyone knows what the Second Amendment is, right? And we could probably spend an hour just talking about what does that really mean. Right to be sure that there's no cruel and unusual punishment, right to a fair trial. We're familiar with what these mean. What we don't spend a lot of time talking about are the 9th and 10th Amendments, and how does that affect our rights. The 9th Amendment states that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights, and enumeration just means numbering or listing, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In other words, you still have more rights. Just because it's not listed there doesn't mean you don't have that right. So it's sort of like a CYA, right? Cover your butt, so to speak. If we didn't write it down, it doesn't mean you don't have that right. That's what the 9th Amendment is saying. If we forgot to include it, doesn't mean you don't have it. And so the 9th Amendment kind of adds a protection there for us. So, the Supreme Court's used the 9th Amendment a few times to provide us additional rights, such as the right to travel, the right to keep personal matters private, the right to vote. The Griswold case is very famous. It set up Roe versus Wade. So Griswold v. Connecticut was a married couple, took the state of Connecticut to court basically saying that we should be allowed to use contraception if we want. We're a married couple. You can't deny us that right. The state of Connecticut actually said that contraception is illegal for married couples. So that
What does contraception mean?
birth control.
Okay.
Birth control. So they took the state of Connecticut to court and said, we're a married couple, we ought to be able to do whatever we want in the privacy of our own bedroom, and the state has no business being in our bedroom. And so they won that case. And that case, the Supreme Court applied the 9th Amendment to that case, basically saying, yep, we have that right. It doesn't say that, it's not enumerated in the Constitution, but from the 9th Amendment we have that protection. The 10th Amendment, judging by the participants in the room, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the 10th Amendment. But the 10th Amendment basically says if the authority's not listed to the national government, nor is it prohibited to the states, then whatever power is left over goes to the states. And you'll hear a lot of states' rights activists saying the 10th Amendment gives us the authority to act. Bob Dole used to keep the 10th Amendment in his jacket pocket all the time. He was a strong states' rights activist, so he always had it in his inside suit coat pocket and was ready to whip it out anytime somebody wanted to debate the 10th Amendment with him. So this amendment supports the notion of federalism, where the national government has its authority, the state governments have theirs, but where the Constitution is silent, the states firmly believe that authority is reserved to them. So basically, to kind of sum up where we're at with my part of the presentation is to remind all of you that government is by the people. That's us. And we have to give government our consent. And we do that through voting. We can do it a number of other ways too, contacting our senators, contacting our representatives, going out and protesting if we're unhappy with something. But it starts with our vote. Okay, onward to Michael Woodward. I'm going to talk to you about petitions.
Lovely petitions.
Actually, if you look closely, this would be an invalid petition, but I forgot to tell Mike Vasquez that this morning. Can you see whose names are on there?
Mm.
So right here is this one.
Yep.
Somebody signed.
Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter.
And Joe Buck.
I'm not sure, but I think if this was real, if those was
It was real, but that people did sign that instead, invalidating the whole petition.
right.
Which
Well,
you
if
could
that-
explain that.
What I'm saying is, if that was a real signature from Derek Jeter, the whole petition might be worth some money.
Yeah, Pawn Stars.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Pawn Stars, exactly.
But you can explain to them what happens when you don't sign your own name on a petition and you.
Oh, yeah.
It
Okay.
invalidates the whole petition, right?
Exactly, yes, it does.
Mike.
No,
Come this way. You're not in the camera view.
Natter.
no, I'm not. Okay, great. Okay. All right, thank you. Basically, how does a candidate get on the, or how do they petition the ballot? How do they get on the ballot for a primary or for the general election? These are called petitions. Now, what many of us do is we go on the different committees for Democrat or Republican. What we do is we go from door to door getting signatures. As you see right here, there's a name, date, and their address, obviously. And you have to get, what is it, 20% or 30% of a certain district in order to get on the ballot.
Depends on the race.
Yeah, depending on the race. Now, as long as you can get, say you have 100 signatures you have to get 30 signatures in order to get that person on the ballot. Now, these ballots these petitions are very specific as far as their laws go. Meaning that if anyone from a different party signs these petitions, say that this is a Republican petition, one Democrat signs it, and it's not caught by the person carrying it, it invalidates the entire petition. Also, if someone from a different party carries these signs on the bottom where it says statement of witness with their address and then the number, that will invalidate the entire page also. Unless you are in the city of Binghamton, you have to be a commissioner of deeds. Outside of there, you have to be a notary of the Republic in order to carry any petitions for a different party than yourselves. Does that make sense?
So if you're a Republican and you're carrying for a Republican candidate, that's fine.
That's fine.
But if you're a Democrat carrying for a Republican candidate, that's not fine.
That is correct. And you either have to be a commissioner of deeds or a notary in order to do that. Any questions so far?
So basically, you carry petitions for what end goal?
Okay. The end goal of this is to actually get somebody on the ballot during election day, meaning the primary. If you have, say you have two Republicans that are going, that want to get on the ballot, people go out to get signatures for that person. During the primary, you're going to have two people, both Republican, and At that point, the voters will decide who's going to go to the general election. And this is where it all starts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
Chuck?
thanks.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Sorry, that was my
Okay.
first time
No,
doing this.
no, you were good. And Michael does that all the time.
He's a very active petition gatherer, so that's why he wanted to talk about that.
Do you petition for Democrat or Republican?
Republican.
Republican, okay.
Now, I serve on the Broome County Republican Committee as well.
So what?
Oh, so, hey, all right. So basically, we have what's called petition parties, where we pick up these petitions, we go out to the neighborhoods and we have a list. They'll tell us where we have to go, which doors we can knock on, and what their names are. Say John Doe lives at 123 Fairview Avenue. We'll
And
go
you're
to
going to Republicans' houses, or are you going to Democrats?
just the Republicans' office.
Oh, okay. So are Democrats doing the same thing? Are they,
They do the
going
same
to
thing.
only Democrats?
They do the same
They
thing.
can't try to swindle. They can't try to. Okay.
Matter of fact, there was a city council election for Conrad Taylor, his first time that he went up. His opponent on the Democratic line also went into Sherry Lindsay Park, and his people, the other person's people, got signatures from everybody. Okay? Conrad Taylor went through, he challenged all those petitions, got them all thrown out, and he got thrown off the ballot.
For one little mistake. Yeah.
It was for multiple, but that's
Oh, yeah.
how it works. And as I
Because
said,
some people
legally,
do that all the time. You know, they just write
Yeah.
a random signature
yep.
because they're never going to look at my name.
Well, if
Yeah.
these are ever checked,
They do like Donald Duck. They don't.
Yeah. you could do that, but if you write Donald Duck, if I collect your signature, you write Donald Duck on there, and I don't catch it, okay, and I.
Okay. Do people ever pose at? Do they register as a different candidate? So say if I'm Republican and I actually register as a Democrat because I know that Democrats are going to ask me to sign petitions, and I write a bad name, could I be fighting against the Democratic Party? Is that or does that
I mean,
make sense?
if you're registered as a Democrat and you sign a Democratic petition, your name won't get kicked out,
Right.
as long as you're registered as a Democrat.
Okay.
You still have to live in the same area though. as
You do, right.
Whichever candidate.
So, for example, you've got 15 signatures. We have Derek Jeter went and signed it. Only if I was to scratch that off and then write 14 signatures in here, the entire petition is actually legal at that point. But if I do not catch that signature, write 15, it invalidates the entire petition.
Interesting.
Yep.
When you go door to door to a lot of people, are they like, do they answer the door? Are they friendly, or sometimes they're like, go away? No, because you introduce yourself as you were.
You basically you get a little bit of everything. You're gonna get people that are happy to see you, people that are like, really, are you bothering me? Okay. And then you're gonna get the people that are gonna be complaining about the party, or they're just gonna be in a bad mood. And I don't know about you, but I've had some doors slammed in my
Oh,
face
yeah.
too.
Jane
Yeah.
has a question.
If I don't register for a party, I shouldn't sign a petition, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And now, as far as carrying the petitions itself, the only way you can carry any party is if you're a notary. If you're not a notary, you have to carry your party's petition. Otherwise, if it's caught, you sign your name here and right here, the whole petition gone. The whole petition is invalid and can be thrown out, and the candidate, say if the candidate needs 150 signatures, and you go out and get 60 signatures, they need 150, right? You've got 60 of them, and everybody else gets the rest of them. These are knocked out, he's now below that threshold, and he's not gonna go on the ballot. And that's why these are also extremely important too. Because this is where the candidate and people that work for the candidate actually go out into the community. You can actually talk to them, get your views out there.
Oh, I know, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
this week, I dressed in a suit, and the only thing I wanted to do was like do something like similar to that. Because I like debate a little bit, but I want to know more information so I know better on the topic of what I'm debating.
That's fine. That's cool. Any
Yeah.
questions you got, go for it.
Yeah.
All right, on to Michael Vasquez. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Let's wake up. We're gonna have some fun.
Yay.
I love to do this, to talk about some of these issues because they're really important. So let's do a real quick run through on this. So far we know that our Constitution was built with the idea of freedom involved. It is meant to be a declaration of your power and the limitations on the government. In fact, it is a negative document. What that means is the Constitution says the government can't do almost anything. And you, by default, can do everything. That is what the Constitution says. A lot of people like to look at it different ways. It doesn't matter. That is what it says. In fact, it says it several times in that document, that all the power lies with us. We've heard it it's in the Declaration of Independence, and it's so important. Not only did they put it in the Constitution, they put it into the amendments. That's why we started off with the 9th and 10th Amendment. Because again, the founders said, we need to make sure everyone is perfectly clear. You are the power of our government. You are the most powerful person in our government. And no one will ever get that confused. We have the 9th Amendment saying it absolutely, and at the very end of the 10th Amendment, it says, and the people. The power of the states, all powers, not otherwise noted, lie with the state and the people. So again, we actually have two different amendments saying you have all the power. The government has only the power you give it. Now, that's very important, but we have to back it up. How do we maintain this government? How does this government keep going forward? Well, as we've just heard, we make changes to it to include more people, to make sure that all the people in the society are able to be involved. As we know, we go out and we get petitions so that we can get people into the elections, that we can have people who represent us to go into whatever elected office. Now, as you notice, as we're having the conversations here, we all have different political organizations, beliefs, ideas. It doesn't matter. I want to be very clear about that. Because a lot of people think, well, it's only about the parties and I have to be in this group or that group. No, you don't. Nowhere in the Constitution, nowhere in any of the documents, not a single petition, nothing says you must be in this party or any party. But when you do go out and get petitions, you're going to run into something that's very important. It's called primaries and closed primaries. You're going to say to me, Mike, well, what is that all mean? What is that about? Well, let me walk you through it. Make it easy. Because all of this is really very easy, just no one talks about it. So you go out and you go and you get your voter registration form, you sign, say, hey, I want to be able to vote. I'm an American citizen, I can go out and vote. Fantastic. On that form in New York State, it's going to say, do you want to be part of a party? You have a choice. You can say, I want to be with party X or party Y. And in New York State, besides the two big ones that everyone's always talking about, there are a dozen more parties. In fact, if you go across the entire nation, there are over 100 different parties. There are groups like the Libertarians, the Conservatives, the Green Party, the Communist Party. There are parties for everything. There's a guy not too long ago, a guy was very famous in New York State for being in the Rent's Too High Party. Yes, it exists, and yes, he did run. He was running for governor of New York. Dressed as a black man, dressed like Colonel Sanders, and everyone was very interested. It was pretty fun. But that's the example that there are many, many parties. Never believe that you have only one choice, or you only have one of two choices. You have many choices. But those choices also come with consequences in New York State, because we have a closed primary. So you've joined a party, you're able to vote, because the 9th Amendment says it, and the Constitution says you have all the power of this government. You went, you signed a petition, someone came to your door, knocked on it and said, I have candidate XYZ. You signed your name. Yes, that person sounds like a great person. They represent the ideas that I believe in. yes, I'm going to sign that. Now, but at the same time, there was someone else in the party. Someone else said, I have great ideas too. Slightly different than this other person. Slightly different. So we have two people, have slightly different ideas, have slightly different preferences. They're more interested in one part of where government's going. The other one has more of a different point of view. Doesn't matter what it is. But they both get all the signatures they needed. They needed 50 signatures. Maybe they were going for the school board. Maybe they were going for Congress. They needed 50,000. Maybe they were going for president and you need 5 million. Whatever it is, whatever level that may be, that person got just as many signatures as they needed. Now you have two candidates in the same party, going for the same position, which only has 1 seat. Well, what happens? You can't have them all running in the same party in New York State. There's going to be 1 candidate per recognized party. What that means is you're going to have a primary. You're going to whittle down the number of people who can show up on the ballot for the general election. Now, something that's very important that I want to mention that we've been talking about. When you sign a petition, you are not obligated to vote for anyone. When you register to vote, you are not obligated to anyone. You can vote for anyone or no one, or you can write in Daffy Duck. Or you can write in, hopefully don't write in Derek Jeter on the petition form, then it gets invalidated. But in the general election, you can vote for anyone. And you can even write in, and if you look at your ballots every year, every time there's a ballot, you look at it at the bottom of the form, it says, write in. You can write in anyone's name, whether they're alive, dead, you can write in Deadpool, Mickey Mouse, Marilyn Manson, it doesn't matter. Real person, dead person, fake character. Because that's a signal. Either, and that tells all of the people who are counting this, you are dissatisfied with all of the choices that have been made so far. That you wanted someone else. They're not representing my point of view. So you get to say, I reject all of that. And this is the way that I can reject it. You're still voting, you're still making your voice heard, and you're saying, I want to be represented. But instead of not being a voter, you're saying, I give up on all of those guys. None of them are worth it. And maybe you'll put in a name of someone you do think should be, because candidates can win if enough people write their name in. And that happens at every level of government, except the president. But it could, if enough Americans agreed about it. And this is all very important because, and I'm going to get to the primaries, but I want to take another step back. I want you to understand how important this is all. Did you know that since about 1960, on average, 3 to 4 Americans vote in every election, out of 10. 3 to 4 people out of 10 vote in non-presidential elections. And then during presidential years, it's about 5 out of 6. To be more exact, it's about 3.6 in a non-presidential year and about 5.75 in a presidential year. What that should tell you right off the bat, there are 6 out of 10 people that don't count. They don't matter. They might as well not exist when it comes to voting and how our nation's going to be run. Because they have no voice. No one hears them. They don't vote. They don't help choose who's going to be in elected office. They're not helping to choose which laws are going to be passed. There are going to be 5 issues in New York State this November, ballot issues. They're called referendums. Sometimes they're called propositions, have a couple of different names. But these are 5 bills that everyone in New York State can vote on. These are issues that you get to decide because you're a voter and you're involved. And you get to say, is New York going to do it or not? There was one not too long ago, Proposition 1, about 5 years ago, for New York casinos, to make casinos in New York State a rule. And everyone who was a registered voter was able to vote and say, do we want casinos in New York State or do we not? The people of New York said, yes. Now we have casinos. This is another example of you have the power. You made that choice. If the people in New York said, no, I don't want casinos. I don't want to look like Atlantic City. Guess what? We wouldn't have any casinos in New York because we got the vote. So your vote is very powerful. And if you don't vote, then you have no voice. And no politician's going to call you up. No politician's going to knock on your door. Nobody's going to ask you what your opinion is because no one's going to care. Because you don't vote. And you have no power. You're just going to do whatever someone else says. You want to see this world change? You can change it. Vote. You want to see America be whatever it is you want it to be. I don't care. I don't care what your political preference is. I don't care what party you're in. You want to change America. You want to see this or that happen. Great thing. Register. Go out and vote. Maybe if you really want to, get some petitions, sign them for a candidate, or be the candidate yourself. I've been the candidate. I've run for Congress. I ran for Broome County Executive. Actually, legislature. Does it mean you're going to win? No. But you get to change your community, whether that's at the local, state, or federal level. So I said all that to bring you back to something else that's important. The closed system in New York. See, New York has what we call a closed system. It applies to petitions. It applies to when we're going out and we have the primaries, when we have too many candidates in a party. What that means is, as you've heard mentioned a couple times already, that if you're in a party, party X, doesn't matter what party it is, you can only sign petitions for party X, you can only go out and get petitions for party X, and you can only vote in the primaries for party X. That doesn't mean that you picked that candidate, because in November, you can pick anyone you want. You can vote for whomever you want. But it means that you believe that person, their voice, should be heard. That this person should go the full way, all the way to the end, and try and win. But you only get to do it for someone who's in the same party as you, whatever that party may be. Why in the world would New York do that? In fact, it's not just New York. There are 6 other states that are closed systems. There's another 5 states that are partially closed. There's in fact 13 states in total that have some sort of closed system where not everyone in the general public gets to vote. Why? Good question, right? Because everyone's going to, but it should be open. I should be able to vote. Why can't I vote for that other guy's candidate? Tell you what, for New York State, the belief is, say we have a candidate, and he's got a natural, he was born with a stutter, maybe he has stage fright. Let's say that he has less money raised up for making ads and commercials and letting people know who they are. So he's got a couple of issues. On team Y, another party, the other guy that's going against him, he's got a lot of money, or she's got a lot of money. They have a lot of money, and they're perfect, they're used to making speeches all the time. They're a great public speaker, and they're ready, they have commercials ready to go immediately. If you have an open system, people in party Y can go on out and vote for the weak candidate in party X and make sure that they have a better advantage. Not that they have a better candidate, but they have a better advantage. They're going to take advantage of the system. They're going to vote in the weakest person they can find so that their guy or gal or whomever has the best advantage. A closed system says, you can't do that. You can't pick the worst candidate to go against your best candidate. Keeps it more fair. Keeps it more honest. It helps make sure that everyone is balanced and everyone's getting the best choice that they get to make themselves. And you get to make that choice, not the parties. And we knock that down too. Parties have nothing to do with this. Parties do not pick the candidates. I hear that all the time. Well, the party picked the candidate, I'm stuck with it. No, you're not. You get to sign the petitions. You get to go out and collect petitions. You get to vote in the primaries. You pick the candidates if you're a voter. And even with a closed system, you still get to pick your party's candidate. You get the voice. You get to pick the best person in there. And again, you get to write in on the primary and say, hey, I don't like that person, so I want Donald Trump. Go out and get a better candidate. People pay attention to this. This is your power. And they know it. But they also know that if there's 6 people who aren't involved, and there's only 4 people they gotta talk to, one of them's a big donor, one's a little donor, one votes straight down the party line, doesn't look at anything. All they do is go straight down the line on that party. And one person is not sure who they're gonna vote for. You just made it very easy for everyone to figure out who they're gonna talk to, because there's a priority. The guys with the money, the guys with a little bit of money, and then they'll eventually get to the guy who doesn't know who, or gal, who's going to not be sure of how they're gonna vote. And everyone else doesn't count at all. No one says this, but it's harsh and it's true. You don't count if you don't vote, because it's that powerful. Only people who vote are important to change everything. Because you can change anything in our government. You can pass any law. At one point, black people in America were slaves. In 1834, they said, hey, let's sign some petitions. Let's go out there and elect a bunch of new candidates and make them change the law. And they did. Same thing for women. Same thing for lowering the age of voting from 21 to 18. Because you registered and got involved in the process. But that explains why we have a closed system. That explains why voting is so important. It's why we have a 9th and 10th Amendment. It's why we're involved in all this. And I think there's a moment that I want to mention to you, something that's going to surprise you guys, because I want to do an example of this. To put this into perspective for you. Who here has a red pen? A red ink pen? You guys got red pens. You have a red pen? Ah, well, that's a problem. See, everyone was told when you came in, pick a pen. Now, the unfair part is you didn't know why you were picking a pen. But that's because you weren't involved in the process. When you picked your pen, you got to be selected into the vote. So we're going to vote and decide, I want to give away $5. I want to give $5 to every person who has a red pen. Everyone who can vote in this are people who have red pens. You don't get to vote. Do you want to get $5?
Yeah.
Okay. This is my red pen. This is Mike's red pen. And there's her red pen. Okay. Oh, and we got one in the back. Okay, so let's take the vote. Do we agree that people with red pens get $5?
Aye.
And we have a consensus. Democracy! We win, and you get $5 a piece. And no, I am not kidding about that. Yes, you are going to get paid $5 a piece. Got to break a $20 bill. There's your money. Voting has consequences. Sometimes it's not as obvious and immediate as what we're seeing right now. But it is serious and important. And yet, it always has a consequence. There is always a reaction. And sometimes, if you're not involved, you don't get the benefits. Sometimes you just get the short end. But if you are involved, if you are paying attention, if you're part of that process, whether it's picking a candidate because, hey, I gotta sign my name on a petition, or I'm gonna run as the candidate, or I'm gonna try and choose between the guys on the petitions because I have a primary, and I'm gonna pick the best person we can possibly put up there to explain to everyone that we have some of the best ideas, and we think we can do better. And we get that candidate out there, and then in November, you get to look at all of these candidates and say to yourself, this is the best person they're going to do more of what I want them to do. They're at least going to try. I think they're great. I'm going to vote for that person, regardless of what party they're in, regardless if it's male, female, whatever, I don't care. You vote for that person, and hopefully things get better. And if they don't, if they lie, if they don't do what they told you, they don't try, if they fail miserably, guess what? We've got another election. And we will get another person in there. And we will try it all over again. And for well over 200 years, that's what we're doing in America. And you know what? When the world has looked at this, you know what they say to themselves? America's the greatest place. You're guaranteed a vote. You're guaranteed that someone's going to pay attention to your vote. That they're going to beg and plead and knock on your door and make phone calls to you and ask you. And they're going to put ads on everything that you've ever seen to make sure that you're going to vote. And that you're going to vote for their guy. Because you matter. Because the power is you. You don't hear that a whole lot. But that's the end of the day. That's it. And when you do that, you end slavery. You let women vote. You let women own property. You lower the age of voting so more people can get involved. You change the world. That's why this is important. That's why we are here today talking to you. I hope it's been very helpful and enlightening. I hope you found that to be interesting. And most of all, I hope it makes you go out and vote for whatever you want, for whomever you believe in. Because I don't care. I just want you to have a reason. You go out there, find your reasons, and you go out and vote for whatever you want. So with that said, let's take a couple of questions. You got one? You look like you wanted to say something.
No, did you take any theater classes, or you're a good performer?
No.
Public speaker? No?
No, but part of what I do is public speaking. I speak to people a lot about these kinds of issues and
Oh
others.
yeah. If there's more people here, they'd be like, I would take, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if that's what it takes to motivate people to go out and vote, I'm happy.
That's good.
Because at the end of the day, I want people to vote. I would like people to vote the way I like, but you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care. If people are voting because they believe in something, then I win. Everyone wins. Because maybe my idea isn't the perfect idea. I mean, we're only human beings, right? I don't know everything. You don't. None of us know everything. But together, we know a hell of a lot more. And someone is eventually going to figure it out. But I guarantee you this. I guarantee you this. You know the secret to being able to lower the national debt, as an example. You know the answer for cleaning the air. You know the answer for making equality around the world and peace. None of you are voting. None of you are have registered. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying you guys specifically. But because if you're not voting, because you're not a registered voter, guess what? No one in the universe knows about that. Nothing will happen with it. Because no one's going to ever knock on your door. Now, I should say something else. You don't need to be in a party to win. You don't need to be in a party to run for an office. So don't think, well, now I've got to be in one of the big name parties. No, you don't. You can be an independent voter. The petitions work for independent voters. You can get a primary, usually it doesn't happen. But you still go through the same process. You need to get a few more signatures than anyone else. But you don't have to be in a party. You just have to have the willingness to say, I want to tell you what I think. And I think it's better than what you're hearing right now. I think I can do a better job. And you need to convince the people in your community, enough of them to sign the petition, to let you run for as a candidate, and then in November to say, you know what? I think that's worth a shot. Let's go. So you don't need to be in a party. You don't need to have all that backing. You just need to have the idea. But it all starts with You have to register, you have to vote. Go ahead.
New York is one example that I'm thinking of, but
Yeah.
and also many other states, where you have like a very lopsided political demographics. What would you say to people who find themselves in like a political minority in a state where they feel their views aren't represented? How do you keep those voters engaged?
You know, that's a great question. And New York is very lopsided. Again, we're not picking sides here, but the answer I have for you is, it doesn't matter what the political parties are. I would ask you the question, who's the best candidate? What is that candidate actually standing for? Do they have a history? Have they been elected before? Have they done things in their life? Are they good at keeping their word? Are they good at trying to do whatever it is they're saying they're going to do? I don't care what party a person is in. I care about that person. I care about their ideas. So when someone says, well, I'm in a small party, so what? You still have a voice, you still have ideas, you still may be the best candidate. Get out there and talk to people. Get out there and let people know. And when it comes to you as a voter, listen. Not to the 30-second ad, not to that really nice looking flyer when they're in their best suit and they've got 3 cameramen taking pictures from 15 angles, with some models in the background. Listen to what they're actually saying. Look at what they're actually doing. Throw away their party name and then vote for the best person. And when we do that, I don't care if 50 billion people are in your political party or if there's 5. The best candidate wins, and we all win. So that's what I was thinking about.
I was gonna add to that, I think you're also asking, in New York, it's like a 60-40 split roughly.
60-30 with 10% other parties.
Of Democrats to Republicans, and Republicans often feel like their voice isn't heard, and that's really what you're getting at, right? So the point is, if all the Republicans stayed home on election day, then nobody's voice is heard, right? So if Republicans don't vote in what they perceive to be a heavily Democratic state, then their voice is never represented. So everyone has to come out and vote. And who's to say that year, like Michael is saying, the Republican candidate isn't the better choice, and the Democrats will vote for the Republican candidate. But if you guys all don't show up too because you're frustrated, there's no strong vote, there's no strong result. So everyone still has to come out and vote, and everyone does have to sort of get party aside. And I wish that the Congress could do that, because in 2 days we're going to have a government shutdown, because the
That's
Congress
a
can't get their act together.
That's a different discussion.
Well, the discussion is partisan politics.
No, it's more than that.
But we're not going to start that now.
That's what I was saying.
The bottom line is, what I really mean to say is, though, people have to get beyond their party and do what's best for the country, do what's best for the state. And so that was the point I wanted to make. But if people stay home because they don't think their vote counts, the same in Texas. If the Democrats all stayed home, they'd never have a voice. And actually, states start to flip one way or the other, as you know, depending upon the particular election. So you can't ever stay home. You should never feel discouraged. Everyone should always come out and vote. And with Mike, do you want to have a
Yeah, I just
point?
want to add one thing. Now, Mike mentioned that on average, 40% of the voters are the ones that actually make a difference or elect people in our general election. Think of it this way, that means that the politicians only have to convince 20% of 40% of the people to get elected. That's it. And being a person that has worked some very, we're going to say, pricey fundraisers, these people, when they give money, they give money. So, and that's what that's all about, the news coverage to sway that 20% so they can get elected. Just imagine if that other 60% actually got involved. All that money would be nothing.
Wouldn't matter at all.
Wouldn't matter at all.
Which is why I made the example before. One big donor, one small donor, one person that doesn't know. There's 6 other people that we're just not talking about because they're not in the process. You bring those 6 people in, changes everything. Because yeah, there's still the one big donor, still the one small donor, and now there's 7 people who don't know who they're gonna vote for. Does it matter if that one big donor, do they have as much power now? No, because there's 7 other people.
Yeah.
You went from having to convince 20% to having to convince 51%. You better be a better candidate.
That big donor can be a big lobbyist or a small lobbyist.
Makes a difference when you think about it that way. And it also tells you why the Constitution says so many times that you are the most powerful part of our government. You make all the decisions. You have all the power. That's why the 9th and 10th say it again. They were literally taking a sledgehammer. People don't notice. They were taking a sledgehammer out there saying, I want you to wake up. You are this government. You make all the choices. Get up and vote. They were trying to make it as important and as obvious as they could. But sometimes we don't pay attention, we forget. We watch the Kardashians or something. And who's on our minds? Any other questions? Yeah.
So I don't
Go
know
for
if
it.
out there. What are your thoughts on illegal immigration and like?
Ask me after this.
Okay.
And again, this was non-partisan. I'll be happy to answer
Just
questions.
way off. I know.
Not with this. Anything else we can answer for you? Yes.
What are your thoughts on people who say, like, if you are dissatisfied with both candidates of a major party,
Uh-huh.
and if you feel like you want to vote in a third party, or you want to write in someone else,
Uh-huh.
how do you respond to people who tell you that you're splitting the vote and that you're causing
There's no
harm?
such thing. How can I split the vote? My vote is always whatever I want. You can't split a vote. What they're saying is, my preference is to see my candidate win. And you're not helping my candidate win. And my answer is, your candidate wasn't good enough to get my vote. Get a better candidate. Because that candidate is the better choice for me. Or writing in Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse is better to me. Pick a better candidate. Then I'll vote for it. So that's the answer I would have back to someone. Mind you, I'm in a political party. I've been very active with petitions. I told you, I've run for elected offices before. So I get it. But the answer is, at the end of the day, you're not splitting the vote, your candidate's just not good enough. Otherwise people would have picked them and they would have voted for them anyway. So that's what I would answer to that. It's pick a better candidate. Then it won't be an issue. Different way of looking at it. You don't hear that a whole lot, but that's the honest answer.
Maybe we talk about how in smaller countries it was private because of the private pool. We talk about in class on like each and every single law instead of like the big picture.
Let me do this. Let me
Sorry.
stop the camera.
Yeah. Okay.
So that we can have that conversation. I just want to stop the camera
Yes.
because I think we answered all
We're
the
done.
questions about
Oh,
that.
yeah.